Hello YouTube, I am back with another video. As the title says, just some tips to improve your digital art. These tips, I don't think these tips are necessarily a secret, so to speak. It's just that, you know, the best tips are usually the obvious ones that people tend to look over. So yeah, here I am, just imparting just some personal things that has really helped me in terms of digital art. So if it helps you, that's good. If it doesn't, I'm sorry. You could roast me in the comments. You could literally say that everything I just said in this video is stuff you already know, and that'll be perfectly fine. I read all the comments, so whatever you say, I will read. I don't always respond to them, but I'll read them. Okay, so for my first tip, I would say to establish a color palette pretty early on. I say this because it is very easy to pick random colors on the color wheel. And I would say the beauty of the traditional medium is that unless you have access to every single pigment available for purchase on your palette paper, more than likely you have a limited color palette by default. Even a box of Crayola markers or crayons have six colors available. You still make it work though. And even then, with the traditional mediums, colors end up mixing somehow more times than not, and they end up working in harmony. With digital medium, however, there are technically no limits to what colors you can put down. So sometimes you'll see people go to the color wheel and preemptively pick some colors to put down next to what they're going to, paint, and they usually stick to it. When you're well versed in this, you'll be able to intrinsically know what colors you need to pick. But if you're new to digital art, I strongly suggest doing that. Make that the first thing you do. Just go to the color wheel, pick good 3 colors, 4 maybe, and go crazy. For the next tip, I would say to really get to know your brushes, and by that I mean mainly their utility. First off, I just want to say that if you are still relatively new to digital art, you should only be focusing on about 3 or 4 brushes. The hard round with no opacity adjustments, the hard round with adjustable opacity, the airbrush, and maybe a random texture brush that could be your pencil brush or whatever you want to use it for. There are so many people that I still see to this day that ask big name artists for the brush that they use, thinking that the brushes hold the secret to their skills, and I wish that was the case. Come on. Art would be so easy if that was the case. And before you guys come at me to crucify me, just know that I too have paid for a brush set, and which is the one that I've been using for the past 2-ish years, I think, and it's not mine. I'm not the one I'm not selling anything. If you want this brush set, go to the person who made it. I'll have a image on the left or right side or somewhere on the screen to show you guys what brush sets or just the main brush that I use now currently. But getting back to the point, I personally feel that before going to all these intricate brush sets like the hair brushes, the chain brushes, the foliage, the cloud, fish, or reptile skin texture brushes, get used to the basic 4 that most programs start out with that I mentioned earlier. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't get any brush pack that you may want in the future. Just know that it's not the instant answer most people may think it is. So give that a bit of thought before you waste, I don't know, how much people charge for their brushes. I don't know, 5, 10. I paid like $15 for a brush set. The point is, don't be so hasty. You get used to the brush sets you have. Start with 2. Start with the hard round and the airbrush. That could do a lot just from the jump. So yeah, go know your brushes, people. Okay, next tip. Use the curve tool to adjust your values. I know you guys have probably heard the tried and true tip. I mean, actually there's a lot of pieces of advice that people say is the most important. Well, as of late, I've been hearing that the most important thing in an illustration is the values. I'm not sure if I entirely co-sign that piece of advice for it being the most important thing to do for a painting, but I do agree that it's relatively important. It can really enhance your illustrations. When you're expert, again, you're most likely doing this naturally, picking out colors with the right values, etc., etc. But if you're not so experienced, just, go to the curves menu to adjust your values. Most art programs should have it. And if the program you have doesn't have anything like a curves menu, I don't know what to tell you. Get off Microsoft Paint and good luck. I think most programs do have it. I know Procreate has it. Clip Studio has it. Photoshop, Clip Studio, Procreate. I don't use any other. I know Coral Paint has to have it. Yeah, I think most art programs do have it. So yeah, if your program somehow doesn't have a curves tool, yeah, good luck. The curves menu will have like usually a green, red, blue option, and depending on the program, it'll have the fourth option being either gamma or RGB, which is basically all those colors. And basically on the farther right end is the bright side and the left is dark. And basically if I want to increase the highlights and increase the darks, I just have just pinch up one point of the line on the right side up and to increase the highlights. On the left side, pinch the line to bring it down to increase the darks. And don't go crazy, or you could go as crazy as you need to. Just adjust it, feel it out. I think on this piece that sort of should be playing in the background, you probably see me adjust the values of this. Like you'll see like the darks get darker and the lights get lighter. At some point of this painting, I don't know when that point's going to be. The point is that I do this method even to this day. So yeah, go use your curves menu. There are the other options like exclusively using red, green, or blue. Adjust that too, but that's for the more experienced side, I think, of digital art. Okay, next, layer mask or clipping mask. Use them. You know how people use like masking tape or masking liquid on some areas of a watercolor or acrylic painting that so they don't get paint on that particular spot? Clipping masks are almost the digital equivalent. Well, actually, the Lasso Tool is more like that, but that's the next tip. Clipping masks, essentially, that you only paint over on what's on the layer below it. And so if you don't like the colors of the hair, or you want to change the lighting or like the formation or something below it without changing the entire piece or painting from the ground up or doing it all over, the clipping masks pretty much circumvents all of that. The only issue is that layer masks are only pretty useful for people that rely heavily on using layers in their painting processes. The thing for me is that I use this here and there. I used to use this a lot in the beginning, but now I usually just, like consolidate all my layers. Like I merge them all since I paint usually a lot and don't really rely too heavily on layers unless it's for effects. But I would say clipping masks are still a very useful thing relatively early. So yeah, use them. Learn how to use them. Okay, last tip, the Lasso Tool. I find that people really don't use this tool in conjunction with their workflow. They tend to use this tool only for like last minute finishing touches, which is honestly not a bad way to use it. But I find that incorporating this in to make hard edges, especially cast shadows, is very useful. So areas like right below the chin, under the nose, or the cast shadow made from the front bangs are all moments in which I would use the Lasso Tool. It's also again super useful for clothing and folds. Basically any point in which there's a hard edge for a shadow, I will instantly pull out the Lasso Tool, make the shape, do the shape of the shadow, get an airbrush and go over it to have like a nice hard edge for the shadow. And yeah, I said that was my last tip, but I'm thinking off the top of my head, is there any other tips? I know a lot of people say to always flip your image horizontally. It's horizontally, right? Yeah, just to see if you make any mistakes, but I think everyone has heard that before. What else do people say? Don't use black in your pieces. That's an obvious one. What else do people say for tips? I'm just like spitballing ideas in my head now because I've heard like so much videos. Use reference, duh. That's an obvious one. If you don't know how something is drawn in position, just go on Pinterest, Google images, and just look up a reference to see how you draw that particular thing you don't know how to draw. And I would say that is technically basically all the tips. Not all the tips. I could think of much more specific things, but I feel like that's a more universal thing, and not necessarily only for digital art, because I could say like things like coloring over your lines, how to use certain colors, meant to use hard soft edges for certain parts of the clothing for cast shadows, like line widths, color variation. I would say learning how proper shape design for shading, ambient occlusion. Remember how ambient occlusion was very popular? I think people still use that even to this day. There was this tip I heard a lot back in the days. Start your images with grayscale. That's another one that I hear people say to do a lot. I don't necessarily co-sign that belief either. Grayscale is a good way to start your images, and so to really control the values first things first. It's just that I don't not that I don't co-sign that belief, I just don't like doing that. As you can see from this painting, I painted this image like 2 or 3 times already. Now, this is the 3rd time I'm repainting this, and it's all been straight to color because personally I don't like doing the grayscale thing unless that's specifically the effect I'm trying to go for. But what other tips exist? Yeah, that's the majority of the tips I can think of. If you guys know any tips that you want to spitball or just, bring out to the ether, I'll read the comments. Just comment it. Say like, oh, I've heard to do this, or I heard using this helps, or, using that tool for this specific situation is very useful. Just say whatever you think will be helpful in the comments. Yeah, that's technically the video. If you like the video, you can like it. Comment, as I just mentioned before. Subscribe if you like this type of content. I do art videos, and I want to do more videos relating to art. My social media is in the description. My Instagram, the Twitch I still don't use, the Twitter that I'm using more often, and the Patron that I'm also getting better at using a bit more often. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope to see you guys in the next one very, very soon.